Hi everyone, my name is Ariana, and today I'll be presenting my final project on interleaving as a study strategy. Interleaving is a study strategy where you mix different topics while studying instead of focusing on just one topic for a long time. Now we're going to talk about how interleaving helps. Interleaving helps student cognition because it prevents studying from becoming too predictable. When students practice the same type of problem over and over, they can start to rely on patterns instead of actually thinking through the concept. They might recognize the format of the problem and apply a method without truly understanding why they're doing what they're doing. Interleaving changes this because when students switch between different topics or types of problems, they have to stop and think about which concept applies before solving the problem. That moment of thinking forces them to process the material on a deeper level. Instead of relying on repetition, they are actively identifying, comparing, and applying ideas. Interleaving can also improve learning motivation because it makes studying feel more engaging. When students repeat the same type of problem many times in a row, study can start to feel more like a chore. That can make it harder to stay focused. When different topics are mixed together, it adds variety to the learning process. Students stay more mentally active because each problem requires a slightly different way of thinking. Interleaving also introduces something called desirable difficulty. The learning process might feel a little more challenging at first, but that challenge actually helps strengthen learning. When students work through these challenges and begin to understand the material, they often feel a sense of accomplishment. So that feeling of success can increase their confidence and really encourage them to keep practicing, which improves their overall motivation in learning over time. Interleaving is the best route because it helps learners practice choosing the correct concept in different situations. When topics are mixed together, students cannot rely just on repeating the same types of methods. Instead, they actually have to pause and think about which concept or strategy applies before solving a problem. This makes learning much more effective because it encourages students to recognize and notice the differences between ideas. By repeatedly deciding which concept to use, students can strengthen their ability to apply what they know rather than just memorizing some steps. Let's get into the research behind interleaving. In the article, Making Things Hard on Yourself, but in a Good Way, Creating Desirable Difficulties to Enhance Learning, the authors explain why mixing topics during practice can improve long-term memory. In simpler terms, the authors explain that when learners switch between topics, they are forced to compare ideas and notice the differences between them. This helps them build a stronger understanding of how concepts relate to each other. Interleaving also requires learners to repeatedly bring information back into memory after working on something else. That repeated retrieval strengthens memory and helps learners apply what they know later in new situations. So now let's describe what these findings mean. When students study different things in an alternating order, the ideas can interfere with one another. This interference forces learners to stop and think about how the concepts are similar and how they are different. By noticing these similarities and differences, students can build a stronger and more organized understanding of the material instead of memorizing each idea separately. This quote also explains that interleaving requires learners to return to a topic after studying other topics. For example, a student might study A, then B, then C, but then later come back to A again. When they return to A, they must bring that information back into their memory. This process of reloading the memory strengthens learning because of the brain having to retrieve the information again. Comparing ideas helps students understand that material more deeply, while repeatedly bringing information back to the memory strengthens how well it is remembered later. I use the strategy of interleaving while studying philosophy, for example. Instead of studying just one ethical theory for a long period of time, I switch between different theories like deontology and consequentialism during the same study session. For example, I might review the main ideas of deontology first, but then move on to consequentialism, but then later come back to deontology. Switching between these theories made me pause and really think about how they were different. It also allowed me to focus on what each theory was really saying and to make sure I understood which ideas belonged to each one. This helped me compare the theories more clearly and understand their major differences. Instead of just memorizing information, I was actively thinking about the concepts, which helped me to remember them better and to really be able to apply them when I was writing for my exams. While studying, it did feel more challenging since I had to keep switching between theories and remembering what made each one different, instead of just repeating the same idea. However, this hurdle was worth it in the end because when I took the pre-response midterm, I was able to clearly explain and apply each theory, which helped me earn a 97%. The way that we can adjust interleaving is by changing how often topics are switched, depending on how difficult or unfamiliar the material is. When a concept is more challenging, it can help to spend a little more time first understanding the basic foundations before switching to another topic and then coming back to it later. Spending extra time on harder material helps students build a clearer understanding before they begin comparing it with other ideas. This would help different types of learners by allowing students to focus more on the topics they find most challenging while still reviewing other material. Students can give extra attention to those difficult spots but still return to other topics, which really helps them stay familiar with the full set of ideas. I use the article Making Things Hard on Yourself, but in a Good Way, Creating Desirable Difficulty to Enhance Learning by Bjork and Bjork. Thank you for listening to my presentation.